Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Day 7 of the 41st Mill Valley Film Festival. We're so happy that you can be here tonight. We are here tonight to present a spotlight program in honor of Richard E. Grant, and we will be showing Can You Ever Forgive Me? None of this could be possible without the support of many, many people, including our sponsors. And I'd like to thank Andalou Naturals. Not only are they a socially conscious company, but they've also been very supportive of our gender equity initiative, Mind the Gap. So thank you very much. Richard E. Grant really took the feature filmmaking world by storm with Nail and I many years ago, and I know in our office that film and his performance probably have more fans than any other film, literally. He went on to make just incredible films, working with great directors like Robert Altman with Gosford Park, blockbusters like Logan, and soon to be featured in Star Wars 9. I would be taking up literally half the evening if I just mentioned and talked one line about every film and TV show he ever made, including Doctor Who. So without further ado, please welcome Richard E. Grant.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's a great honor to be here, and I really appreciate this opportunity because it doesn't happen often to actors who are not big A-list stars like me. So, you know, we're usually in the character actor box where I've been happily for decades and decades, and I'm very grateful for that. And I've been given an incredible opportunity to play this real-life man, Jack Hawk, who, in collusion with the extraordinary Melissa McCarthy in portraying Lee Israel, this real-life writer, I hope that you enjoy this film a tiny percent of what our experience was to make it in 28 days in the middle of Manhattan winter last January with Melissa. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
We will see you immediately after the film for a special moment and then a conversation. Thank you. I'd like to welcome the Director of Programming for the Christopher B. Smith Raffel Film Center, Richard Peterson, to the stage.
Yeah, we're very excited that this film will be opening at the Raffel after the festival, and we think it's a great film. And you've just seen a great performance, so I don't really have to say much about Richard E. Grant. I've been a fan since With Nail and I and How to Get Ahead in advertising, and he's been in so many movies and television shows. He's equally at home, it seems, in period and contemporary pieces, also combining humor and poignancy, as you saw in this film. And I always, one reason I like this performance, there's always a sense of mischief in his work that I think is really just very wonderful. Please welcome Richard E. Grant.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Are we going to talk?
Thank you.
Thank you. I've never had one of these before, so I'm very, very grateful. Okay.
I knew you couldn't kill that cat, you know. You didn't have it in you to do that.
Thank you.
I've heard a number of descriptions, even you calling Jack a grifter, a cocaine dealer, every name as you can imagine. And yet, I've heard you call the character a Labrador Retriever.
Yeah, because I always think, possibly because I grew up in Swaziland, which was and still is the smallest country in the Southern Hemisphere. I've always understood other people as animals first before to find out what characters they are and trying to understand their character as an animal. And I thought when I read the script that essentially Jack Hawk he basically will go up to anybody and try and lick them into submission. And I thought, having seen The Incredible Journey when I was a boy, that movie that maybe some people over 60 like me would remember, and that, Lee Israel is essentially a porcupine. She's very private and prickly and difficult. And I thought, what a weird combination of animal characters these two are, but they form this sort of codependent love-hate relationship. So that is why I've described him as a Labrador.
And the
because I loved him.
And the relationship works really well, even though there's such an odd couple. It's just each one of the characters is getting something from the other that they really, really need. And I know there's been a lot of material on Lee, but what about Jack? What were your references? What did you know about him? What were you able to dig up to have this character that is so funny and so charming and such a rascal and literally a cocaine dealer, as I mentioned, and probably a thief, and all those things? And where did all that come from? Was it primarily the book, or were there other things about him that you could find out?
I read the script and I thought, this is a gift of a part in that there would be this Wikipedia level of information, either on YouTube about him, what he looked like and sounded like, or that Lee Israel's book would reveal all these things about him. But because she was so selfish and self-obsessed, exactly like Melissa McCarthy, when I read the book, which is 124 pages, you can read it in 2 hours, she basically says about him, he was tall, blonde, Portland, which I'm not, and as you can hear, and that he was in jail for 2 years for holding a knife to a taxi driver who he was arguing about how much money he should be paying for the fare, and being Jack, didn't want to pay anything, and said that it was alleged that he didn't actually pull a knife on the guy, and that he died of AIDS at the age of 47, so, chin lifts. And that is as much as she gave away. So it really was a testament to Jeff Whitty and Nicole Holofcenter, who have taken really sort of snippets of information from Lee Israel's book and mined this whole story and relationship into what you've just seen. And there were no pictures of him at all, and the only description that she added was that he used this little cut-off or stubby cigarette holder because he believed that, being a chain smoker, this would somehow prevent him getting lung cancer before his other proclivities ended his life, which he enjoyed obviously right up until the end. So that's as much as I had to go on. And then working with Melissa, flew to New York in the middle of January last year, and got there on Wednesday for a costume fitting, and the Friday we were supposed to have rehearsals or meet with Melissa, but because she leads such a, she's designing clothes and releasing albums and what else, doing dog shows and making 5 movies a week, she wasn't available. And I begged Marielle Heller, I said, I'm so paranoid, I won't be able to sleep for the next 72 hours if I meet her on Monday morning and have to work with her for the first time. I held her in such awe as well. So luckily, Melissa felt similar anxiety, and so half an hour meeting turned into a 3-hour morning, and we went through everything in the scene and realized that we were on the same page about everything, as well as Marielle's vision of what the film should be. And luckily, because I realized that you can't count on chemistry with another human being, but like the Malcolm Gladwell book Blink, in that essay that he talks about, that it takes maybe 5, 10 nanoseconds to make an instinctive response to another human being, we got on instantaneously and remained so. So when we got to Monday morning, it felt like we'd known each other longer than we actually had. So I was very grateful for that.
Well, it certainly shows.
That's a very long answer to your short question.
No, long answers are fine here. We appreciate
I'm so thrilled for this.
thoughtful
Thank you.
answers. And yeah, it's just so evident. And I guess it must have been very exciting, this particular part, and being able to work with her. And the chemistry is important, but it just seems like this is one of those things where you can't imagine anyone else playing Jack and anyone else playing Lee.
Thank you, because I got a call from my agent in November in London, where I live, and she said, we're in a situation where you have to read this script in 24 hours and you have to make a decision. And my first response was, who has died or who has dropped out? And she said, you don't want to ask that. She said, just remember that Albert Finney screen tested and was offered Lawrence of Arabia, and he turned it down. Please answer your phone. And I said, yeah, but this isn't Lawrence of Arabia and Peter O'Toole's situation. She said, no, but the point is, don't ask about what you don't need to know about. So I read it, and I said, who is playing Lee Israel? And she said, Melissa McCarthy. I said, right, I'm there. When do we start? So that was it.
Well, thank goodness. It's really interesting, what was going on in New York at that time with AIDS, and obviously the literary scene was very much different, and they talk about it in terms of Tom Clancy and authors and celebrities. But I wanted to ask about dealing with the gay and the lesbian community. I think I read somewhere that at that time there really was more of a separation between the lesbian community and the gay community in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
And this was sort of, AIDS was an element where the communities started to come together.
Yeah. But at this point, we know from the people that knew Lee and one particular person that was hanging around the set one day, and Melissa said, is that somebody that you know? And I said, no, I don't know who that is. So she went and spoke to this man and said, are you part of the production team or whatever? And he said, no, I was a great friend of Lee's, and my place was to sit on the left-hand side of her, and she'd have a Walkman on, keeping the world out. And he said that she was the only woman who was in Julius's bar at that time because it was a safe place for her to be. Nobody was going to harass her. And sometimes she'd hold court, but for the most part, she was this curmudgeon, porcupine who sat on her own. And she said, how am I doing? Because you knew her, and I'm just impersonating her. And he said, oh no, it's uncanny for me to see you because you are her. And she said, well, do you think Lee would have been happy with how I'm doing it? And he said, happy was not really something that Lee did. So I had done a terrible movie. I'm apologizing if anybody has seen it, called Hudson Hawk with Bruce Willis. And yes, thank you. I feel the same way. And Sandra Bernhardt and I play husband and wife in this insane movie. And I went to see Sandra, who was living in the meatpacking district at that time, in 1990. And I was so shocked, because I'd never seen that before, of men who were younger than me on street corners who were dying with placards saying, no money, no medical aid, family abandoned, please help. And that made such a profound impression on me. And then I was great friends with an actor called Ian Charleson, who died in 1990. And he played the Scottish runner who wouldn't run on a Sunday in the movie Chariots of Fire. And he had this incredible, he only wanted to sleep with straight men. That was his first thing. So he'd always say to me, come on, come on, come on. And so eventually one day I just said, right, Ian, okay, let's go around the back and I'll bend over, come on. And then he got so embarrassed. And he said, no, I'm not going to do that. I know your wife. And I said, no, you've been pestering me. Come on, let's go do it now. Anyway, the point about me saying about that, I didn't. Although my father did warn me, he said, you want to be an actor, essentially you're going to be facing a life in makeup, tights, and avoiding buggery. So, all of which is true. He was of another generation. Anyway, the point about this is that Ian was somebody who had this incredible louche, scallywag quality to him, and at the same time, he was like a little boy in a man's body. And he was a great inspiration when I thought, who is this guy like, that he leads this dissolute life, and even if he was the kind of guy that had the charm to, he could take the false teeth out of his grandmother's face, polish them up, and resell them to her at an increased price, and she'd feel like she got a bargain. He didn't do that, but figuratively, that's the kind of charm that he had, and I thought, that's who Jack is. So in combination of that, Ian Charleston, a Labrador, that's how I arrived at who you've seen.
No, it's perfect. Perfect description.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is. You love Jack, and you understand at the same time that you cannot trust him at all.
Yeah, yeah. You know that if you're lending him money, you're never going to see it coming back.
Sometimes that's a good thing to know. I remember once it was somebody that I didn't like to see often, and he came up to me and said, I'd like to borrow $50. And I sat there and thought and said, if I give him $50, I won't see him for at least 6 months. This is good use of money. So.
And did he stick to that?
Yes. And I think I got a good year out of it. Why don't we open it up for questions?
Okay.
Do we have any questions from the audience here? Yes, right over here. The question is that you're originally from Southern Africa, and have you kept those connections?
Yeah, because like a homing pigeon, I've gone back almost every year, and I've just spent Christmas there. So, yeah, it has a huge pull. Even though a lot of people that I grew up with have now left or emigrated or gone to other places, they're still, the core of people that I grew up with are still there. And they didn't give a flying fuck, if you excuse my language, about what I do, or they've never seen the movies that I've been in. And it's incredibly refreshing. So if I went there like this, they'd go, what is that, a tin opener? Get real. And that's very refreshing to have. And, the sight and the smell of the place where you grew up, I think, that's when I talk about being an animal. It has such a pull on you that I don't think it ever goes away. It certainly hasn't for me. But thank you for your question.
Was there anyone in the audience who also grew up in Swaziland? No?
Okay. They have great dope there, too. Oh.
Additional questions? Yes, the woman right here.
You spoke of yourself as a character actor, which is a fine skill to have, because I think that means you could roll into absolutely any role, anywhere. What point in your life did you realize that was your path as an actor, was to be the character?
How did I realize that I was a character actor? Because when I was at drama school, at the end, and I directed quite a lot of plays when I was at theatre school, the professor of drama took each student for a 15-minute segment at the end to give you a kind of life career assessment of where he thought your future lay. And he said, you're obviously going to be a director. That's what your talent is. And he said, hand on heart, I like you, but you're never going to make it as an actor. And I said, why is that, Professor? And he said, well, you look too weird. You have a very long face, like a kind of Undertaker, and unless you smile, you look miserable. And so I thought, well, he obviously knows something that I don't know. And then I kept thinking, Donald Sutherland. He's from a small town in Canada, and he had a long face. He'd made a career as an actor. Anyway, the first movie I was ever in 32 years ago, called Withnail and I, in 1986, that when the reviews came out in England, they all said, sepulchral featured, tombstone featured, lantern jawed, all of this stuff just came at me, and I thought, the professor was right. Except that I'm here to tell the tale that he was wrong, so fuck him.
Yeah.
But I have caught myself unawares. I've done that thing where, because if you're born with a long face, and anybody in the room who has one will know this syndrome, that I can walk past a shop window sometime and go, oh my God, who is that really miserable looking? And then you go, oh, it's me. and smile to try and animate yourself because, I look like this and I feel perfectly happy. I've just won an award. But I look as miserable as fuck, and I know I do. I've had people come up and say, "You all right?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm feeling great." And they go, "Oh, right, okay." So, you see, I have to smile more. But thank you for your question.
The gentleman over here. Oh, no, the woman, I'm sorry, the woman over there. No. Your face is not long at all.
What is the next big thing that you would love to have an opportunity to do? Whether it's already on coming up or something that you want to feel like you're putting it out in the universe.
Next big opportunity. Thank you very much for asking. In 1977, when I was a drama student still, I went to see a science fiction film, and I thought it was so extraordinary. The music and everything about it was, and it was in 2001. I thought, how do actors ever get to be in a movie like that? Certainly not anybody from Swaziland. Fast forward 40 years, and I am now in the final of those 9 movies that George Lucas imagined, of Star Wars Episode 9. And I'm going to tell you about the character and the plot. And it comes out in Christmas 2019. Yeah. I mean, the likelihood of becoming an actor where I grew up was in 1969 when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, and everybody who was 12 when I was at that age wanted to be an astronaut. And that was as ludicrous to people as saying, well, I want to be an actor. People went, yeah, right. So the fact that I am, and I'm now in Star Wars, not quite going to the moon, is just, it's like a dream come true. So, but that's what's happened.
Other questions? Yes.
Were you ever able to loop back to your drama professor or theater professor and say, by the way, I'm here. I've gone further than...
Did I loop back to my drama professor?
Did you ever meet up with him again?
He died. So maybe he's looking up from wherever he is, but he never knew. He never knew it turned out all right. But thank you for that.
Additional questions? Yes, over here.
So you talked about your passion for directing. What about directing films?
The question is about your passion for directing. What about directing films?
I wrote and directed one film that came out in 2006. Unfortunately, it was released in the USA on Mother's Day and marketed as a light comedy. Now, if you'll appreciate that it was entirely autobiographical, filmed in Swaziland, and the opening scene is a 10-year-old boy, played by Nicholas Hoult, playing me, waking up on the back seat and inadvertently seeing his mother, played by Miranda Richardson, fucking his father's best friend on the front seat. It wasn't really what people were expecting on Mother's Day.
Yikes.
So it was marketed differently in Australia, where it did really well and made a lot of money. But so that was the one time I got to write and direct, and it was an amazing experience for me to have done that. And I've tried subsequently to do 2 other films, and both of them were indies, and they got cancelled. The last 10% of the money fell through 3 weeks before we began shooting. So I gave up and started making perfume instead. Much more profitable.
Yes, you have your own perfume brand. Would
I
you
do.
like to tell people about it? And is it being sold?
Well, it's a
can we get it
unisex
here
brand, and it's
online?
called, ironically, Jack. I was inspired I had a mad crush because I'd never met an American before, and a young lady called Betsy Clapp, with a double P, whose father was in the United Nations or something, came to Swaziland in 1969. I couldn't afford to buy her scent for her birthday, so I made rose and gardenia petals boiled up in sugar water, buried it in the garden in jam jars, and thought that this would osmosify itself into beautiful scent, but of course it was stink bombs. So 40 years later, I've professionally done it, and the top notes of the first one are lime, marijuana, and mandarin. And it did so well in England, and it's now, you can buy it online, and I'm not going to sell this here.
Well, if you go out into the lobby,
Yeah. So I've done it. So it's been a lifelong passion of smelling, and it's how that's what I don't understand why everybody doesn't do that. Smell everything in sight.
what do you
Good.
think?
Award winning. Yes.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Thank you for this. It was great. You have this great combination of deep emotion and really dry wit always going on at the same time. I love it. And thank you for Poshnosh. Do you remember that?
Thank you. Yeah.
I just want to know if it's when you're doing broad comedy like that, it's hard to keep a straight face.
Thank you for your question. Is it difficult to do broad comedy and keep a straight face? The first film that I was ever in, this writer-director said, if anybody on the crew laughs or finds what we're doing funny, he would cut the take and say, we have to start again. So he said the only way you can, in his view, successfully play comedy is to do it absolutely dead straight. So if you're a character in desperate circumstances, which certainly Jack is most of the time, you have to play the reality of that, and the comedy comes out of the situation. Because if you play it with sort of half a wink to the audience, he said you'll be dead in the water. And I've found that to be absolutely true, and Melissa bore that out as when we worked together. But thank you for your question.
There was a gentleman here.
What animal am I? What do you think? Okay, a bird. Yeah. Flamingo. I'm pretty long.
All right. Any other questions out here? It's the lights are in my eyes. Sorry.
There were references from with Mel and I, the Edmonton film, which I enjoyed, Millionaire, and were they not intentional? When you're leaving in the final scene,
Yeah.
I was immediately already thinking about the scene in the tea house in with Mel and I, where you live. You say it was a millionaire?
I don't know. It's 32 years ago. I have no idea. No.
Yeah, the
No,
question-
there's no cross reference from a script from 32 years ago to this one whatsoever. I mean, that may be coincidental because millionaire is a word that's not uncommon. No, I see what you're saying, but no, none of it was improvised. There were two words that I improvised. In the first scene in the Julius Bar, where my character appears for the first time, I introduce myself to the barman and Lee Israel. I say, Jack Hock, big cock. And they kept that. I was amazed. It just came out. I thought, that's the kind of guy he is. So that's what I did. But no cross-reference to that film, but it shows that you're on a level of movie geekdom that I like. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, over here on this side.
You really aced that part, and you said you filmed it in 28 days. I was so impressed at the final scene, you look so much thinner. I was going to ask how much weight did you lose in such a short period of time?
Did people hear that? Well, the question was, the film was in 28 days, and at the last scene, you really looked like you lost a lot of weight, and is that the question, correct?
Melissa was shooting 28 days because she was in every single scene. Regrettably for me, I was probably about 16 or 18 days. And because Ian Charlson, that I was telling you about from Chariots of Fire, in the last month of his life, he lost all his hair, and he wore that headscarf tied like that. So I did that because I thought, I'm not going to shave my head or wear a bald cap. So I did that and put baby powder in my hotel room over my face and a couple of pencils. And I thought, try and look as miserable as possible. And sort of scrunch up like this when I was walking. And I went to the production makeup department the next day. And Marielle Heller, when she saw me, she said, I think that's too extreme. And somebody else said, no, I think we get where he's going. And then they allowed a sort of modified version of it. So it was trying to look as thin as possible. And I've also got very elastic skin, as you're asking me in detail now about my craft. Either do that, or if I do this, resting bitch face, as I call it. It goes in and out, as they say. So, that helped. And the lighting as well. So, and the whole situation. So, and the feeling of, but I'm delighted that you think I lost weight like that. Thank you very much. I will tell people that I did. Yeah, I lost 28 pounds between Monday and Saturday. Thank you.
But it is acting, and that's the brilliance of it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. We have time for a few more questions. Gentleman right here.
On the set with Melissa, given that she's has her roots in comedy, what was it like between those
Oh.
scenes?
The question is, what was it like between the scenes, since Melissa is in comedy and you have this great rapport and friendship with her? Could we be a fly on the wall for a minute?
Yeah. She's a very difficult person, and she never knows her lines. She's unfriendly, as you can imagine. She hated me. What else can I know? I loved her so much because and I know this sounds pretentious, but I don't know how else to say it. She feels absolutely emotionally present. And the only other actor that I've come across to that degree, I had a small part in The Iron Lady, bless you, with Meryl Streep. And she, again, is like litmus blotting paper, that you say something or you have a conversation with her, and you literally see the thought and the blush of it go in and out. And Melissa's like that. So she's incredibly emotionally present. So that scene in the Julius Bar at the end, and I have to take a deep breath because I just even thinking about it, so you kind of go, oh my God, because it was so, it came at the end of the shoot as well. And because we knew that our characters were saying goodbye to each other, and my character was dying, and that she'd had to ask for forgiveness and, don't make me young and don't make me sound stupid, all that stuff that he says to her, that we found it almost impossible to get through that scene. Well, we did. We never, ever were able to do it without becoming very emotional, but we knew that we couldn't sort of go into a big drizz fest of sort of blubbering and snot going in all directions. So trying to hold it in was the challenge of it. And we did it all day long because the scene was much longer than the one that you've seen here. And we were just wiped out by the end of that. And unusually, that when you make a movie with somebody, you hope that you're going to stay friends with them or have a friendship. But I would come for lunch, or she would invite me for lunch almost every day, even when I wasn't working. So that's a bonus that you don't expect. Because usually on a movie, in my experience, you have this very intense relationship with somebody, and you either have to pretend to sleep with them or fall in love with them. And then you see them a year later on the press go round, and it's like, hi. And you go, they're on another project, and all that stuff that all you have is, oh, you remember that day that we did this? And that runs out very, very fast. A bit like a school reunion. You kind of go back to, was that it? But with us, it seems it's ongoing. I mean, I had a barbecue with her on Monday night, and I said, where are the other guests? She said, well, it's our 30th wedding anniversary. And I was the only guest there. And I thought, oh, well, that's something that's, so that's how she is. She's just incredibly genuine. So when I now hear that she's like this with every actor, and that she adores Jude Law, and she adores Donald Gleason and all of this, I feel like I'm getting stabbed every single time.
Well,
thank you.
I think we're running out of time, but I just can't thank you enough for all these gifts.
Thank you.
The gift
Thank
of
you
the
very
film.
much. Thank you. Thank you.
And the gift of your amazing career. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you very much.
And the film is opening at the Raffel when? November.
November.
November, everywhere. But
Thank
come
you.
here.
Thank you very much.